She almost left. Snow was knitting the city into quiet, and the clock above the cafe door said 7:43. Just another minute where precision mattered to Emily Carter. Late arrival on Christmas Eve, she thought, and felt the old, practiced impatience stir. Then she stayed. Hello, I've got a short story for you about a single decision that changed 3 lives. If you love warm holiday tales, hit subscribe and settle in. This one is small in spectacle and large in heart. The cafe smelled of cinnamon and warm paper, a refuge from the street where snow fell thick and muffled. Emily sat by the window in her red coat, the fabric bright against the gray evening. Her phone face up on the table, the polished case reflecting a neat calendar filled with blocks, meetings, flights, negotiations. She'd agreed to a blind date out of curiosity more than hope. Punctuality was a private covenant she kept with herself. A few minutes felt like a failure. The bell above the door clinked. A man walked in, breath fogging in quick white clouds, his coat bearing the history of winter, salt stains, frayed sleeve. He was not who she expected. Where she carried crisp certainty, he carried a tired steadiness. Calloused hands peeking where his gloves had once been, cheeks flushed from the cold. He paused, scanning, then offered an apologetic smile that softened the hard edges of the evening. "Sorry I'm late," he said before he reached the table, voice quick, tracing the space between punctual and chaotic with one sentence. "Bus broke down on 7th and—" He ran a hand through his hair as if rearranging a problem into something smaller. "And my babysitter canceled at the last minute. I didn't want to leave her alone, so I had to sort it out. I'm Daniel." Emily closed her phone and smiled, small, careful. "Emily, no problem. It's—" She glanced at the clock, then back at him. "It's all right." He sat, coat brushing the chair, and both ordered coffee, because some rituals settle things better than words. Steam rose between them, a private fog. Outside, headlights smeared through the snowfall like soft watercolor. Emily noticed the edges, a faint tear at his cuff, the way his hands folded around the cup to warm them. Not the details of a pity story, but subtle signs of hard work and long days. They traded the formalities that fill a first meeting, jobs, where they grew up, until Daniel mentioned a daughter, and the room shifted. When he said Lily, he smiled in a way that left no doubt the name carried more than information. It was a small son centered on everything he did. Emily asked about her age. He said 5, and the words spun easiness into the conversation. "She calls a tiny tree we picked up from a thrift shop her magic tree," he said. "It's this plastic thing, all bent, but she's convinced it makes wishes come true. She put a star on top last year, made it with glitter and tape. Says it's good luck. We keep it by the window." Emily pictured the thrift store tree, imagined Lily's careful fingers and crumpled glitter. The image lodged like a softer coin in her chest. "Magic," she repeated. There was a want in the syllable, not of childishness, but of something true and plain. How small things could feel enormous when someone you love believed in them. They kept talking. Daniel told her about juggling 2 jobs, the quiet acceptance he had of the grind, the way he arranged his life around his daughter's bedtime stories and scraped together Saturdays. He mentioned his wife in passing, how she'd passed 2 winters ago, and the words came without theatrical grief, like a steady current beneath the surface. Emily listened, her responses measured, but something unbuttoned in her. He was not a lesson to be learned. He was a person who measured his life by different standards. At some point, the conversation shifted from ordinary to intimate without fanfare. Daniel laughed about Lily insisting the thrift star needed more sparkle, and Emily, who kept sparkle in meeting agendas and presentation decks, felt out of place and then wonderfully out of place. She found herself saying things she wouldn't typically say to someone she had just met. Small admissions about missing little joys she had set aside. She spoke of evenings she spent in hotels and boardrooms, of a Christmas tree once trimmed alone because the company holiday had been a work dinner. The confession was light but honest. When they finally stood to leave, the snow had thickened into silence. Daniel hurried out into the evening, his scarf trailing like a compromise. Emily watched him go and realized her hands were empty of the small, sharp satisfaction she usually stored in logic. Waiting those extra minutes, an odd lapse from her usual schedule, felt like an unplanned gift. It was late, but not late enough to stop something from beginning. She thought of Lily's magic tree all night. That image stayed with her like a soft ache. The next morning, Emily walked into a small shop devoted to things that smelled like memory: paper, brass, wool. She moved through aisles where ornaments hung like tiny treasures. She did not want her act to be a spectacle. She wanted to be small and exact. At the counter, she bought a tiny sparkling star, its points imperfect and bright. She wrapped storybooks and a coat, a winter coat that could fold into warmth without asking for attention. She added a toy that hummed softly when squeezed, not flashy, but kind. She paid and left without asking for a note to be delivered. She wrote one anyway, small handwriting, tucked it into the package. Merry Christmas. For Lily, may her tree always have a star. On Christmas Day, the boxed gifts were placed quietly at the worn door of the apartment Daniel shared with Lily. A neighbor later told him they'd seen a woman in a red coat walk quickly down the hallway, but the moment could have been imagined. Daniel carried the boxes in, the weight of them different from the usual grocery bags. Lily, who woke every morning with the gentle conviction that the day might be extraordinary, squealed when she saw the pile. "What if it's from Santa?" she asked, eyes big and shining. Daniel sat on the floor and helped her unwrap. The little star fit right on top of the thrift store tree, its glitter catching the weak winter sun. Lily pressed her forehead to the tree and whispered, "Thank you," as if speaking to someone who might be listening in the rafters of their small living room. Daniel read the note then, fingers trembling only where the hand hasn't yet learned to steady everything. Merry Christmas. For Lily. He did not assume a benefactor, nor did he feel owed. He felt seen. The feeling was quiet and enormous at once, the kind of gratitude that doesn't demand public proclamation. That night he kissed a warm forehead, set the star on a crooked branch, and told Lily the story of the star as if it had always been theirs. "Magic finds us when we need it," he said. Lily hugged him and said the star had fixed everything. Weeks folded into months. Emily imagined them in little hanks of time, images she carried to spaces between her scheduled hours. She thought of Lily tucking the star in with sticky tape and of Daniel reading aloud after a long shift. The gifts had been anonymous, but not empty of consequence. The gesture had been small enough to preserve dignity and intimate enough to change something deep. She did not intend to reach out. On impulse, weeks later, after a day that had exhausted her with deals and deadlines, she typed a message and deleted it twice. Finally, she wrote, "I hope the star is still shining. Merry belated Christmas." She didn't sign her job title or an address. She signed only her first name. It was an awkward human thing to do. When she hit send, she felt the peculiar hollow of reality meeting curiosity. Daniel received the email that night. He read it with a folded-in breath. He did not assume it was a mistake. The message felt like a small star itself, faint, a point of light. He replied with, "Thank you," and a brief update. Lily still called the tree magic. Did she mind if they saved her name? Emily wrote back, and they began to exchange small, careful messages. The tone was never about pity. It was about shared humanity. Winter stretched thin, and then the spring came with new tasks. The relationship between them moved deliberately, like a train switching tracks. Sometimes slow and steady, sometimes with sudden, smooth momentum. Months after the first meeting, Daniel sent an invitation. Lily's school was putting on a holiday play in December, Snowflake Chorus, and would Emily consider coming? The wording was simple. The invitation contained no strings, only an open seat. Emily cleared her calendar for one evening. She wanted to see the star in the light it had helped brighten. The gym smelled like polish and popcorn. Children bowed in borrowed costumes. Parents leaned forward in folding chairs with the fierce, proud attention of people watching small constellations of their own making. Lily danced across the gym floor with a paper halo, her face flushed with performance joy. Emily watched, chest full, as the little star on the thrift tree sat in a corner of the family's row, its sparkle catching the stage lights. After the play, Lily ran into Emily's arms without ceremony. She declared, proudly and plainly, "This is the lady who gave our star more sparkle." Emily knelt and hugged her, and the moment was neither theatrical nor private. It was the honest union of two lives whose edges had rubbed down into comfort. Daniel stood nearby, watching with a kind of ache that had lost none of its tenderness. They talked about ordinary things, jobs, schedules, schools, but the conversation hummed with a different frequency now. Mutual respect, the slow turning of two people discovering they could fit. Months became a pattern of small meetings, coffee runs, park visits, evenings where dinner was more important than a boardroom presentation. They learned each other's patterns, the way Emily measured time in blocks, how Daniel reserved Sundays for pancake experiments, how Lily collected buttons she declared treasures. Emily began to cancel meetings that intruded on a Saturday morning. Daniel started to answer emails at odd hours, knowing she might be awake. One year after the first snow had blurred the city, they met again at the same cafe. The red coat was still something Emily wore when she wanted a little color in the world. She arrived early, 2 cups of cocoa to warm her hands, and watched the street for the figure she could now recognize years earlier. The angle of his shoulders, the slow smile he carried like a lamp. Daniel came in with Lily in tow, her cheeks rosy and her hair tucked into a wool hat that matched her mittens. The thrift store tree had grown in their lives into a ritual. Every Christmas Eve, they placed a new little decoration on it, something found or made. The cafe was quieter this year, lights softer, the playlist a little more forgiving. They settled into a familiar rhythm, jokes that landed, silences that fit, a hand brushing a sleeve in a place that felt easy and inevitable. It was not a grand declaration. It was a living normal. Later, after Lily had been tucked into bed and the little star shone from its window perch, Emily and Daniel walked under the same kind of falling snow that had pressured them into that first conversation. He took her hand, a gesture that did not need fireworks to be meaningful, and they stood in the hush of early winter. The city seemed to hold its breath along with them. "You stayed that night," Daniel said quietly, remembering the first meeting the way people remember the first time they heard a favorite song. She looked at him, and there was a softness to her usual precision. "I did," she said. "And I think waiting was the best decision I made all year." He smiled, and it was not a smile meant to be captured for anyone's admiration. It was a thank you folded into the present. "You changed how Lily sees things," he said. "You changed how I see things." She shook her head gently. "You changed me too. You reminded me that some of the best decisions aren't in my planner." They did not need a tidy epilogue. There was no dramatic unveiling of secrets, no showy confession that must fix everything at once. The twist of the story was not that Emily had given anonymously and later been discovered in a thunderous reveal. The twist was quieter. A woman in a red coat chose humility over a headline, and a single act of kindness gave a little girl a star that would be remembered each winter. Both of them were altered not by spectacle, but by the accumulation of many small, honest choices. When the narrator pulls back from the cafe window and the hush of falling snow, the view is simple. Patience, a tiny act of generosity, and a late arrival that kept a conversation alive long enough for people to see one another. Small things can rearrange lives. Waiting matters. Giving can be a way of listening. If this warmed your heart, share it with someone who could use a little quiet kindness this season. And if you enjoyed the story, like and subscribe. There are always more small moments waiting under the next snowfall.